The autumn air in suburban Ohio carried a crispness that hinted at the coming winter. Leaves crunched underfoot as I walked down our quiet street, the familiar sights of my neighborhood wrapping around me like a warm blanket. The local coffee shop, with its inviting aroma of roasted beans, buzzed with the chatter of neighbors catching up on their lives. This was my world, predictable, safe, yet somehow stifling. My husband was away again for work, leaving me with our son, Jake. At 16, he was navigating his own path through adolescence, often retreating into the sanctuary of his room. I found myself feeling increasingly isolated in our home. My days blended into each other, cooking meals, tidying up after him, and waiting for my husband's sporadic phone calls that rarely lasted more than a few minutes. One evening, while preparing dinner, I noticed Jake sitting on the couch engrossed in his phone. The flickering light illuminated his face in a way that made him seem older than his years. I called him to the kitchen under the pretense of needing help with chopping vegetables. As he entered the room, I felt an unexpected longing, a fleeting desire to connect beyond our usual mother-son dynamic. "Can you hand me that knife?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He complied without looking up from his screen. "Sure." The moment felt heavy with unspoken words. I watched him move about the kitchen with an ease that reminded me of how quickly he had grown up. It struck me how little we truly shared these days beyond routine exchanges about school or chores. After dinner, as he settled back onto the couch and resumed scrolling through his phone, I gathered courage and approached him again. "Want to try something different? How about a massage? You've been studying hard." He looked up at me with surprise but nodded slowly. "Okay." I led him to the living room where soft lighting cast gentle shadows across the walls. As he lay down on his stomach on the couch, I felt an unusual flutter in my chest. The act of caring for him was instinctual, it was what mothers did. Yet there was something else lurking beneath, an awareness of physical closeness that had never been present before. As my hands moved over his shoulders and back, kneading away tension from long hours hunched over books and screens, I wrestled with conflicting emotions swirling inside me. Each stroke seemed to draw us closer together in a way that felt both comforting and wrong. In that moment of intimacy, I caught sight of a small piece of paper peeking out from under one of the cushions on the couch where Jake had been sitting earlier. Curiosity piqued, I retrieved it discreetly while continuing to massage him. "Mom," Jake murmured softly as if sensing my distraction. "Just a second," I replied absently as I unfolded the note in my lap. The handwriting was messy but legible. "I can't tell you everything yet, but please trust me." My heart raced as questions flooded my mind. What could he possibly be hiding? I folded the note back up quickly and tucked it away in my pocket before returning my focus to Jake's back. The tension between us shifted subtly. It felt electric now, as if something unspoken had passed between us, an acknowledgement of secrets yet to be unveiled. "Thanks for this," he said quietly after several moments passed in silence. I nodded but didn't respond verbally. Instead, I continued massaging him gently while grappling with thoughts about what lay ahead for us both. As night fell outside our window and darkness enveloped our home like a shroud, Jake finally turned over to face me. Our eyes met for an instant longer than usual, a moment suspended in time where everything else faded away. Then suddenly, there was a sound outside, the unmistakable crunch of gravel under tires followed by headlights piercing through our living room window. My heart dropped into my stomach as realization hit. My husband was home earlier than expected from his trip. Panic surged through me while Jake's expression morphed into one of confusion mixed with concern as we both recognized what this meant for us at that moment. The fragile boundary we were towing just moments before had been shattered by reality's intrusion. "Mom," he asked hesitantly as if sensing my distress. I quickly stood up and moved toward the window to peer outside just as headlights turned off and shadows emerged from within our car. My husband stepping out with briefcase in hand and weariness etched across his face after another long week away from home. Quick. Act normal. I whispered urgently to Jake, who sat frozen on the couch looking startled by my sudden shift in demeanor. He nodded slowly but remained still while uncertainty hung palpably between us like an uninvited guest waiting for its chance to disrupt everything we knew about family life. The very foundation we were built upon now cracking under pressure from unacknowledged desires bubbling beneath its surface. With every step toward normalcy feeling heavier than before, I took a deep breath, trying desperately to mask what had just transpired between us. A fleeting connection fraught with implications neither one of us could fully comprehend, yet remained vulnerable enough to feel nonetheless lingering like an echo left unresolved, echoing through our lives forevermore. The weight of what had just happened settled heavily in the air between us, an unspoken acknowledgement that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I looked at him, my son, his youthful face still marked by the innocence of childhood, yet now shadowed by something deeper that had begun to unfold. The massage had started as a simple act of care, an attempt to ease his tension after a long week at school. But now it felt like a doorway had opened, revealing emotions I hadn't anticipated. As I moved my hands along his shoulders, I noticed how he leaned into my touch. His body responded instinctively, and for a moment, the world outside faded away. The hum of the suburban neighborhood, the distant laughter of children playing in the park, it all became background noise to this fragile moment we were sharing. I hesitated, my hands pausing mid-motion as thoughts raced through my mind. What was happening? Was it wrong? Mom? His voice broke through my reverie, soft yet questioning. I swallowed hard, trying to find words that would bridge the chasm forming between our roles as mother and son. Just trying to help you relax, I managed to say, though it felt inadequate given the gravity of our interaction. He nodded again but didn't pull away. Instead, he shifted slightly under my hands as if seeking more than just physical relief. A rush of warmth flooded through me, an undeniable connection that sparked something deep within me. The air thickened with unspoken feelings, each breath felt heavier than the last. Then came a momentary lapse in time when our gazes locked, a fleeting second where everything else ceased to exist. We kissed. The memory flashed vividly in my mind, a moment where boundaries blurred and emotions tangled dangerously close to crossing lines we had never considered before. I quickly resumed massaging his shoulders, hoping to dispel any lingering tension from that brief encounter. I focused on the rhythm of my hands against his skin while battling conflicting thoughts that swirled around like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. How could I feel this way? Wasn't this simply maternal instinct? Yet beneath that instinct lay something darker, a yearning for closeness that felt both beautiful and forbidden. The door creaked open suddenly, pulling me from my thoughts like a cold splash of water on a warm day. My husband stood there with an expression that shifted rapidly from surprise to concern as he took in the scene, his wife hovering over their son in an intimate setting that could easily be misconstrued. "What's going on here?" His voice carried an edge of accusation despite the casualness with which he tried to phrase it. I straightened up instantly, creating distance between myself and our son as if trying to erase any evidence of what had just transpired. "Just helping him relax after a rough week," I replied too quickly. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he stepped into the room and glanced at our son with an expression that seemed protective yet puzzled. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. "Yeah," our son replied too quickly as well, avoiding eye contact with either of us. A tension filled the air like static electricity before a storm brewing not just outside but within our family dynamics as well. My husband turned back toward me with concern etched on his face but said nothing more. He could sense something was off but couldn't pinpoint what it was. After exchanging awkward glances for what felt like hours but was likely only seconds, he finally broke away from us and headed toward the kitchen for a drink. Relief washed over me temporarily as I allowed myself to breathe again, yet guilt gnawed at my insides like acid eating away at metal. Once alone again with my son, silence enveloped us once more, It felt heavier than before, the weight of unacknowledged feelings pressing down on both our hearts like an anchor dragging us deeper into murky waters where clarity was lost. I shouldn't have, my voice faltered as I tried to articulate what lingered unspoken between us now, an unsaid understanding that we were navigating treacherous territory together without any map or guide leading us through these dark woods filled with temptation. "It's okay," he murmured quietly while looking away from me again, a gesture signifying both acceptance and confusion swirling within him too. We sat there in silence for what seemed like eternity until finally breaking apart. The invisible thread connecting us remained taut yet fragile enough to snap at any moment should one wrong move be made again. As days passed since that incident, each day feeling longer than its predecessor, I found myself increasingly caught between affection and guilt whenever I saw him around the house or during dinner conversations where laughter used to flow freely but now felt strained under scrutiny from both myself and my husband, who remained blissfully unaware of these new complexities forming beneath our roof. The fall festival approached swiftly, a local tradition celebrated every year filled with laughter echoing through streets adorned with colorful decorations signaling autumn's arrival, while enticing aromas wafted through town beckoning families out into community gatherings reminiscent of simpler times, when joy came easily without hidden tensions lurking beneath every smile exchanged among loved ones gathered together under bright lights illuminating paths leading nowhere near resolution or understanding regarding what had transpired between mother and son just days prior. Yet despite all this chaos swirling around me, I found solace in those stolen moments spent together amidst laughter shared over caramel apples or pumpkin carving contests, the intimacy growing stronger even amidst societal norms attempting desperately to keep boundaries intact while we danced precariously close along their edges, testing limits set forth by generations past who'd never dared tread where we now stood, teetering precariously above abyssal depths filled only by uncharted waters, waiting patiently below. But then came another twist, one neither one of us saw coming nor could have prepared ourselves for. The realization struck hard when we discovered another note hidden among his belongings during one evening cleaning session. A scrap torn hastily written containing words heavy laden with confusion mirroring feelings we both tried desperately not only understand but also suppress. "I don't know how to talk about this, but I think about you differently now." Those words echoed hauntingly within me like sirens singing warnings against approaching cliffs steeped in uncertainty leading straight down into darkness unknown. And there lay everything laid bare upon paper, unraveling threads binding mother-son relationships forever altered by desires once thought taboo now surfacing unwillingly demanding acknowledgement even amidst fear gripping tightly around hearts yearning for connection despite knowing full well consequences awaited should they dare venture forth beyond societal expectations placed firmly upon shoulders burdened already by love complicated beyond measure. The weight of our shared silence hung thick in the air, a palpable reminder of the unspoken bond that had formed between us. As I continued to knead the tension from my son's shoulders, memories flooded my mind, his first steps, laughter echoing through our home, the moments that defined our lives together. Yet now, those memories felt tainted by a longing I never anticipated. "Tell me about your day," I prompted softly, needing to anchor myself in something familiar. He hesitated, and I could sense the internal struggle within him. "It was fine. Just school stuff. Anything interesting?" The question felt trivial against the backdrop of our shifting dynamic, yet it was a lifeline to normalcy. He shrugged, his gaze drifting toward the window where autumn leaves danced in the wind. "Not really. Just same old." The air thickened again as I resumed my massage, each stroke a battle against my own desires. Guilt clawed at me. How could I find solace in this intimacy when it felt so wrong? But as he leaned into my touch, I caught a glimpse of something in his expression, a flicker of vulnerability that mirrored my own turmoil. "You know," I ventured cautiously, "I've been thinking about how quickly time passes." "Yeah," he replied quietly. "Feels like yesterday we were playing in the backyard." A bittersweet smile tugged at my lips. "Those were good times." As we reminisced about simpler days, an unexpected warmth enveloped us both. The comfort of shared memories began to blur the lines between mother and son, an uncharted territory teetering on the edge of chaos. In that moment, our eyes locked for a heartbeat too long. A silent understanding passed between us, something deeper than familial affection stirring beneath the surface. Our lips met then, a fleeting brush that sent shockwaves through me, igniting every hidden desire I had tried to suppress. Shock and elation collided within me as I pulled back instinctively, breathless and wide-eyed. "What just happened?" he asked, confusion etched across his face. I don't know," I stammered, heart racing as panic set in. The gravity of what had just transpired crashed over me like an unforgiving wave. "We shouldn't have." Before I could finish my thought or offer any semblance of clarity, the sound of keys jingling at the front door shattered our fragile moment. My heart dropped into my stomach as dread filled every corner of my being. "Mom?" My husband's voice echoed through the house. "Quick! You need to go." Panic surged through me as I urged him toward his room. He nodded silently and slipped away just before my husband entered the living room with an unsuspecting smile on his face. The contrast between our worlds felt jarring, the warmth we had shared moments ago now replaced by an icy dread hanging heavily over me. "Hey there. How was your day?" he asked cheerfully. I forced a smile onto my face, heart racing as I struggled to maintain composure. "It was good, just spent some time with, you know how it is." He raised an eyebrow but seemed satisfied with my answer for now. "Glad to hear it. How about dinner? What do you feel like?" The mundane question felt surreal against the backdrop of what had just transpired, a stark reminder that life continued on its predictable path despite everything unraveling beneath its surface. "I can whip up something quick," I replied absently while thoughts raced through my mind like wildfire. How would we navigate this? What would happen next? As dinner simmered on the stove and laughter filled our home once more, my husband completely unaware, I couldn't shake off the feeling that everything had changed irrevocably between us. The connection with my son deepened further than words could express. It transcended boundaries drawn by societal norms and familial expectations. Later that night, as darkness enveloped our home and silence settled around us like a heavy blanket, guilt gnawed at me relentlessly while sleep eluded me entirely. My heart raced with thoughts spiraling into chaos. What did this mean for us? For our family? I found myself standing by his door again hours later. Uncertainty clawed at me as I contemplated knocking, but fear held me back firmly in place. Just then, he opened it slightly. Surprise flickered across his features before concern took over. "Mom?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted softly, stepping inside quietly so as not to disturb anyone else in the house. He gestured for me to sit beside him on his bed, the familiar room now laden with tension thicker than ever before, a sanctuary turned battleground for emotions both exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly before trailing off into silence again. Uncertainty hung heavily between us like fog rolling in from unknown depths ahead. "What are you thinking?" My voice trembled slightly despite efforts to remain steady. There was no turning back now regardless of where this path led us both next. "I don't know how we can go back after what happened." His words hung heavily in the air between us, a stark reality crashing down around fragile dreams spun from threads once deemed forbidden yet undeniably real now more than ever before. My heart raced anew at those words. They echoed within me like sirens blaring warnings against approaching cliffs steeped in uncertainty leading straight down into darkness unknown. What lay ahead remained shrouded in shadows waiting to reveal consequences neither one of us could predict or prepare for fully. And yet here we stood teetering on precipices forged by desire, entwined tightly around fear, binding hearts yearning desperately for connection despite knowing full well repercussions awaited should they dare venture forth beyond societal expectations placed firmly upon shoulders burdened already by love complicated beyond measure. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I lay there, tangled in sheets, acutely aware of the warmth beside me. My heart thudded against my chest, a steady reminder of the reality we had embraced just hours before. The weight of what transpired pressed heavily upon me, yet there was an undeniable thrill that accompanied it. He stirred slightly, and I turned to look at him. His features were serene in sleep, youthful and innocent, yet I couldn't shake the tumult of emotions swirling within me. Guilt clawed at my insides while another part of me was drawn to him like a moth to a flame. The decision we had made lingered in the air, a fragile secret that bound us tighter than any words could express. A sudden noise from downstairs jolted me from my thoughts. My husband's voice echoed through the house, muffled but unmistakable. Panic surged through me like ice water coursing through my veins. He was home early. I hadn't anticipated this. The thrill I felt moments ago shifted into dread as I contemplated our precarious situation. "Mom?" My son's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, laced with confusion and concern. "Are you awake?" "Yes," I managed to reply, forcing calmness into my tone despite the chaos brewing inside me. "I'll be down in a minute," he said softly before slipping out of bed and moving toward the door. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the hallway as he disappeared downstairs to face his father. I sat up slowly, heart racing as I threw on a robe, desperately trying to compose myself. Each movement felt heavy with consequence, every second stretched painfully as I prepared for what lay ahead. Downstairs, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension as I entered the kitchen. My husband stood by the coffee maker, his back turned to me while he poured himself a cup. He seemed unaware of how precarious our situation had become. "Good morning," I said cautiously. "Morning," he replied without turning around. The air crackled between us with an urgency that felt almost tangible. My son sat at the table, his gaze darting between us as if sensing something amiss but unable to articulate it. "Did you sleep well?" my husband asked casually over his shoulder. "Yes," I replied too quickly, feeling exposed under his scrutiny. My son shifted in his seat, glancing at me with an unreadable expression that sent a chill down my spine. Did he know? Could he sense what had unfolded between us? "I've got some errands to run later," my husband continued after taking a sip of coffee. "Might be gone for most of the day." "Okay," I said softly, relief mingling with anxiety at his impending absence. As he turned to face us fully for the first time that morning, his expression remained neutral, almost too calm for my liking. "We should have dinner together tonight," he suggested casually, though there was an underlying tension in his voice. My heart sank at the thought of maintaining appearances while harboring such profound secrets beneath our roof. "Sure," I forced out, trying to sound enthusiastic despite feeling trapped within a web of deceit. After breakfast ended in strained silence and awkward glances exchanged between us all, my husband grabbed his keys and headed out without further ado, leaving behind an unsettling quiet that settled over us like fog creeping across a darkened landscape. Once alone with my son again, we faced each other across the table, a chasm filled with unspoken words stretching between us like an insurmountable wall built on fear and desire alike. "Are you okay?" he finally asked cautiously. "I'm fine," I replied too quickly again, it felt like a lie hanging heavy on my tongue. He studied me intently for a moment before looking away, an action filled with uncertainty that made my heart ache for him even more deeply than before. "I just wanted to check on you." His voice softened as if afraid of saying too much or crossing an invisible line drawn by circumstance and expectation alike. "I appreciate that." My throat tightened as memories flooded back, the warmth we shared last night still fresh within me like embers glowing beneath ash waiting only for breath to ignite them anew once more. But now wasn't the time. Reality loomed large over our fragile connection, threatening everything we had begun to explore together. Everything we so desperately wanted yet knew could never truly be ours without consequences crashing down around us like waves against jagged rocks on stormy shores. "We need to talk about what happened," he whispered finally after what felt like hours stretched into mere minutes filled only by silence punctuated by unsteady breaths escaping both our lips unbidden. "Yes, we do." The weight behind those words hung heavily between us, a promise wrapped tightly around uncertainty echoing louder than any declaration could ever hope to convey fully. But how could we possibly navigate this labyrinthine maze forged from desires forbidden? How could we confront truths lurking just beneath surfaces polished by years spent pretending everything was normal while hiding behind facades crafted carefully over time? The doorbell rang suddenly, an unwelcome interruption shattering whatever fragile moment we had begun forging together anew amidst chaos swirling all around us, threatening our very existence itself. I shot up from my seat, instinctively moving toward where sound came echoing through halls leading back toward front door, the urgency thrumming inside, pushing forward past trepidation, knowing full well who awaited beyond threshold waiting patiently outside. My heart raced again as dread mixed with anticipation consumed every thought, racing through mind, screaming warnings against opening doors leading straight into unknown realms fraught perilously close, alongside temptation lingering ever present just out of reach always, whispering promises sweetly laced within shadows cast long upon ground below. With trembling hands resting lightly against cool metal handle, gripping tightly while taking deep breaths, steadying self, preparing face whatever awaited beyond threshold where life would inevitably shift irrevocably forward into territories uncharted, filled only echoes past choices made, reverberating loudly, now louder than ever before. As I stood at the threshold, the weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum echoing my internal turmoil. The house felt different, charged with an energy that danced around me, whispering secrets of what had transpired. I took a moment to collect myself, inhaling deeply and letting the familiar sense of home wash over me, cinnamon from yesterday's baking and the faint hint of pine from the wreath still hanging on the door. I stepped inside, bracing for what awaited. My son was in the living room, his posture tense as he sat hunched over his homework. The light from the window cast shadows across his face, highlighting a furrowed brow that spoke volumes about his own struggle. I hesitated, torn between wanting to comfort him and fearing what my presence might ignite. "Hey," I said softly, trying to sound casual despite my racing thoughts. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before it was quickly replaced by a guarded expression. "Hi." His voice was low, almost hesitant. I crossed the room slowly, each step feeling like a leap into unknown waters. "How's school?" I asked, hoping to steer us into safe territory. "It's fine." He returned his gaze to the papers sprawled before him. The silence stretched uncomfortably between us as I fought against the urge to reach out and touch him. Then it happened, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A folded piece of paper lay partially hidden beneath a textbook on the coffee table. My pulse quickened as I recognized it as one of his notes. Curiosity pulled me closer. Perhaps it held answers to questions we both avoided addressing. "Is this yours?" I asked gently, picking it up with trembling fingers. He glanced at it and then back at me, shadows of anxiety clouding his features. "Yeah, just something." I unfolded it carefully, revealing scrawled words that seemed to pulse with emotion. "I don't understand what's happening between us." My breath caught in my throat as I read those words again. Confusion mirrored in his eyes echoed my own turmoil. He was feeling it too, this unnameable tension that twisted our bond into something fraught with complexity. The moment hung heavy between us like fog rolling through an empty street at dawn. "We need to talk," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly but didn't speak. Instead, he stared down at his hands resting on the table as if they held all the answers we sought but couldn't find. Before we could delve deeper into this precarious territory together, a familiar sound broke through, my husband's car pulling into the driveway. Panic surged through me like ice water coursing through veins. Time was running out. "I think your dad is home," I murmured urgently. "We should." "I know," he interrupted quietly, standing abruptly and shoving his notes aside as if they were suddenly too heavy to bear. The tension thickened again. We were both aware of how our lives had shifted overnight but unsure how to navigate this new landscape. I hurriedly folded the note back up and placed it on the table where he had found it before moving toward the kitchen doorway just as my husband entered through another door leading from the garage, a doorway that felt like an escape route for me now more than ever. "Hey! You're home early," I called out with forced cheerfulness while glancing back at my son who remained rooted in place like a statue carved from uncertainty. "Traffic was lighter than expected," he replied casually as he shrugged off his coat and tossed it onto a chair nearby, a habitual gesture that felt strangely disjointed now amidst our brewing storm. My son shifted uncomfortably beside me while my husband moved toward him with an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "How's everything going?" "Fine," my son muttered again without looking up, his voice barely above a whisper now laden with unsaid words swirling around us like autumn leaves caught in wind gusts outside. "Just fine?" My husband raised an eyebrow skeptically while crossing arms over chest, a protective stance that only added weight onto already fragile atmosphere filling our home today unlike any other day before this one had begun unraveling everything we thought we knew about ourselves. As we exchanged pleasantries filled with undertones masking deeper currents flowing beneath surface interactions among us three, the three who once shared laughter freely now bound by invisible threads pulling taut against each other, I caught sight of something out of place on our family bulletin board near kitchen entrance, an envelope addressed simply with no return name or address upon its front, an unexpected visitor lurking within shadows cast long across walls surrounding us. My heart raced again as dread mixed with anticipation consumed every thought racing through mind screaming warnings against opening doors leading straight into unknown realms fraught perilously close alongside temptation lingering ever present just out of reach always, whispering promises sweetly laced within shadows cast long upon ground below. With trembling hands resting lightly against cool metal handle gripping tightly while taking deep breaths steadying self preparing face whatever awaited beyond threshold where life would inevitably shift irrevocably forward into territories uncharted filled only, echoes past choices made reverberating loudly now louder than ever before. The envelope beckoned me closer. Curiosity clawed at my insides even as dread coiled around heart reminding me consequences lay hidden beneath layers waiting patiently for their moment to spring forth unexpectedly when least anticipated most likely leaving chaos behind them. "Mom? You okay?" My son's voice broke through my reverie bringing focus back onto reality surrounding us. The mundane yet vital fabric woven together binding our lives inseparably even amid tensions simmering just below surface threatening eruption if left unattended for too long. "Yes," I replied too quickly perhaps catching glimpse worry etched across young features staring back at me seeking reassurance amidst confusion swirling around our family unit now fragile enough to shatter under slightest pressure applied wrong way. But even as I spoke those words meant calmness enveloped everything around us. It became clear nothing would remain unchanged forever not after today not after everything unfolding right before our eyes shifting perceptions altering relationships forging paths ahead obscured by uncertainty looming large overhead threatening all we held dear. The afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the table. I stood there, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, my mind racing with thoughts I could hardly contain. The normalcy of the moment felt achingly surreal. The clinking of dishes and the distant laughter from children playing outside only amplified the tension within me. I glanced at my son, who was absorbed in his phone on the couch, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath our roof. His brow furrowed in concentration, and for a fleeting moment, I wished to bridge that distance, to reach out and comfort him as I had done before. But now that gesture felt laden with unspoken implications. "Mom?" His voice broke through my reverie. "Can we talk?" The simple request sent a jolt through me. My heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead, an honest conversation or perhaps an unraveling of all that we had carefully stitched together in silence. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Sure," I replied, trying to sound casual. He hesitated before joining me at the table, his demeanor serious. "Things have been weird lately," he said quietly, searching my face for answers. "Weird?" I echoed, unsure how to navigate this conversation without revealing too much. "Yeah, between us." He looked down at his hands, fidgeting with his fingers. "I just want to know where we stand." A lump formed in my throat as memories flooded back, moments when our connection had deepened beyond mother and son into something more complicated. The weight of those memories pressed against my chest like an anchor pulling me down into uncharted waters. "Things have changed," I finally admitted, choosing my words carefully. "But family is still family." He met my gaze then, a flicker of understanding mixed with confusion clouding his eyes. "I don't want things to be awkward." "Neither do I assured him, though each word felt like a lie wrapped in half-truths. Just then, the front door creaked open. It was my husband returning home early from work. The sound sliced through our fragile moment like glass shattering on tile. My heart sank as dread pooled in my stomach. "Hey! You're home!" I called out too cheerfully, attempting to mask the tension that thickened the air between us. "Yeah," he replied, stepping into the room with an air of weariness that clung to him like a second skin. My son quickly shifted his focus back to his phone as if trying to disappear into it. The three of us sat there in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily above us. "Everything okay?" my husband asked, eyeing me closely as if sensing something was amiss. "Just chatting," I said lightly while avoiding his gaze. "Nothing major." He nodded but didn't seem convinced. As he moved toward the kitchen counter to grab a snack, I couldn't help but notice how his movements were slow and deliberate, like he was trying to piece together something elusive and troubling. After dinner, we settled into our usual routine, my husband flipping through channels while my son retreated upstairs under the guise of homework, but unease lingered in every corner of our home. As night fell and darkness enveloped our neighborhood like a heavy blanket, I found myself unable to sleep. Thoughts raced through my mind like wildfire, guilt intertwined with longing twisted into an unbearable knot deep within me. I tiptoed down the hallway towards my son's room. An inexplicable pull guided me there despite all reason telling me otherwise. Standing outside his door, I could hear him softly humming, a tune that felt hauntingly familiar yet distant enough to remind me of simpler times when life hadn't been so complicated. Before I could stop myself, I knocked softly on his door and pushed it open slightly. He looked up from his desk where scattered papers lay strewn about, a mix of schoolwork and doodles reflecting fragments of himself scattered across pages. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly as if he'd expected me all along. "No," came my breathless reply as I stepped inside cautiously, a moth drawn toward a flame despite knowing better than to get too close. "I've been thinking," he trailed off uncertainly before meeting my eyes again with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "What about?" My voice barely broke above a whisper, every word felt heavy with implications we hadn't yet dared articulate aloud. "I don't know how to say this without it sounding wrong." He paused again before continuing cautiously, "But sometimes it feels like you're different around me." My heart raced anew at those words, so raw and vulnerable yet laced with truth that neither one of us wanted fully acknowledged. "What do you mean by different?" His cheeks flushed crimson as he struggled for clarity amidst confusion swirling between us like autumn leaves caught in an unexpected gust of wind outside, the world beyond our walls oblivious to what lay hidden within them. I just mean, he hesitated again before finally uttering what hung between us unspoken, it feels like there's more than just being mother and son. The admission hung heavily in the air, an uninvited guest crashing into our fragile space filled with uncertainty and guilt alike threatening everything we held dear together yet apart now more than ever before. Before I could respond or process those words fully, a sudden crash echoed from downstairs followed by muffled voices rising sharply above hushed tones sending jolts through both our bodies simultaneously as realization dawned upon us. Nothing would remain unchanged forever, not after tonight, not after everything unfolding right before our eyes, shifting perceptions, altering relationships, forging paths ahead obscured by uncertainty looming large overhead threatening all we held dear. As footsteps approached rapidly up the stairs toward us, I knew that nothing would be resolved tonight. Only questions would remain unanswered hanging heavily over us waiting for dawn's light which might offer clarity but also potential devastation on its horizon. As the footsteps grew louder, a knot tightened in my stomach. The door creaked open, revealing my husband's silhouette framed against the hallway light. His expression shifted from confusion to suspicion as he took in the scene before him. My heart raced, and I exchanged a quick glance with my son, whose face mirrored my own panic. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, silence hung heavily between us, charged with unspoken truths and unshed tears. I could feel the weight of our shared secret pressing down on me like a physical force, threatening to crush everything I had built. "Mom?" My son's voice was barely above a whisper, filled with uncertainty. "Nothing," I finally managed to say, forcing a smile that felt brittle and false. "Just some stretching exercises." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. My husband raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Stretching? At this hour?" He stepped further into the room, and I could see the gears turning in his mind as he took stock of our disheveled state. "Yeah," my son chimed in too quickly. "I was just feeling tense after practice." My husband crossed his arms, skepticism etched across his features. "You don't need to hide anything from me," he said slowly, searching our faces for signs of deceit. An argument brewed beneath the surface of our calm facade, a storm ready to erupt at any moment. I could sense it building like dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The air thickened with unspoken accusations and fears that had lingered too long without resolution. "I'm tired," I said abruptly, breaking eye contact and turning away from both of them. "It's been a long day." "Then maybe we should all talk about what's really going on," he suggested softly but firmly. His words hung in the air like a challenge I wasn't prepared to accept. The thought of laying bare our tangled emotions felt unbearable, yet avoiding it felt equally impossible. "I think it's best if we just leave things be for tonight," I replied sharply, trying to regain control over the situation that was slipping through my fingers like sand. But my husband wasn't done probing. "This isn't just about tonight anymore," he pressed on gently yet insistently. "We need to address what's happening in this family." My son shifted uncomfortably beside me, his presence reminded me of everything at stake, the delicate balance we had maintained until now teetering on the edge of chaos. "What do you mean?" my son asked defensively, eyes darting between us as if searching for answers that would never come. "It means," my husband hesitated for a moment as if weighing his next words carefully before continuing. "It means we're not communicating well." The truth stung more than any accusation could have. It echoed through me like a haunting refrain reminding me of all I had failed to acknowledge, the distance growing between us all despite our attempts at normalcy. "We need honesty," he added quietly but firmly. I took a deep breath. My heart raced as thoughts collided within me, thoughts of love and guilt entwined with desire and fear swirling into an indistinguishable mass that threatened to consume me whole if left unexamined any longer. Fine. I snapped suddenly before glancing at my son again, his wide eyes reflecting confusion mixed with hurt, an expression that cut deeper than any argument ever could. We need honesty, I repeated more softly this time as realization dawned upon me. Avoidance wouldn't resolve anything. It would only deepen our wounds further until they festered beyond repair. I'm sorry, my voice trembled slightly as I faced both of them again, a confession lingering just beneath the surface waiting for release, but fear held it hostage within me still. I don't want secrets between us anymore, I managed finally after what felt like an eternity spent grappling with emotions too complicated to articulate fully yet desperately needing acknowledgement nonetheless. A small step toward clarity amidst turmoil threatening everything dear around us. The silence that followed was deafening, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last while uncertainty loomed large overhead casting shadows over every word unspoken lingering heavy within this fragile moment hanging precariously between us all. I don't know how we got here, my husband murmured finally breaking through our collective silence. A hint of vulnerability cracking through his stoic facade revealing layers beneath that mirrored some part deep within myself yearning for understanding amidst chaos surrounding us now. You're not alone in feeling lost, my son interjected quietly glancing down momentarily before meeting both our gazes. His tone earnest yet tinged with youthful apprehension reflecting something familiar within myself echoing back memories long buried beneath layers accumulated over years spent navigating life together. As we stood there caught in this tangled web woven from choices made and paths taken, I felt something shift within me, a flicker igniting hope amidst darkness threatening suffocation. Maybe honesty could illuminate shadows lingering too long obscuring truths hidden beneath surfaces polished by time. But then reality crashed back down around us when another loud thud reverberated from downstairs jolting us once more into awareness, reminding each one present here tonight just how fragile everything truly was. What was that? My husband turned sharply toward the door while instinctively moving closer toward where sounds echoed from below. My heart raced anew fueled by dread spiraling upward as possibilities unfolded rapidly within mind racing ahead conjuring images far worse than anything previously imagined. I'll check it out, he said decisively before heading toward the staircase leaving both my son and I standing frozen momentarily caught between fear and uncertainty gripping tightly around hearts pounding wildly against chests echoing their own frantic rhythms urging clarity amidst chaos unfurling around us. I glanced sideways at my son whose expression mirrored mine perfectly, a blend of worry mingled with something darker lurking beneath surface waiting patiently for opportunity seize hold once more. And as footsteps faded downstairs leaving silence trailing behind, I couldn't shake feeling impending doom looming larger than life itself casting shadows deeper than ever before hovering ominously over everything familiar unraveling thread by thread threatening collapse under weight unbearable no longer able withstand pressures mounting steadily higher above until finally bursting forth releasing torrents hidden away too long waiting patiently unseen yearning desperately find light again. In those moments suspended between breaths filled anticipation mingled dread, I understood one thing clearly, nothing would remain unchanged after tonight. Not after everything unfolding right before our eyes shifting perceptions altering relationships forging paths ahead obscured by uncertainty looming large overhead threatening all we held dear. The tension in the air felt almost tangible, wrapping around us like a thick fog. I stood in the dim light of the living room, the shadows dancing on the walls as I replayed every moment leading up to this point. The weight of my choices pressed heavily on my chest, and I could hear the clock ticking, each second echoing louder than the last. My son had just left after a conversation that had stripped away any pretense of normalcy we had clung to. His eyes held questions that I could no longer avoid, and my heart raced with every thought of what lay ahead. I glanced at the door, half expecting my husband to walk through it at any moment, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath our roof. As if summoned by my thoughts, I heard the unmistakable sound of his key turning in the lock. Panic surged through me like ice water as I quickly glanced around, searching for a way to mask what had been unfolding between us. The door swung open, and he stepped inside, shaking off autumn leaves from his coat. "Hey," he said casually, but there was an edge to his voice that hinted at something deeper. "How was your day?" I forced a smile, my heart thudding against my ribcage. "Just the usual," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "How was yours?" Longly he sighed, setting his briefcase down with a thud that echoed through the silence. "I didn't think it would ever end." I nodded absently, my mind racing back to moments shared in secret with our son, the laughter, the confessions that had blurred lines once drawn so clearly. The guilt swirled within me like a tempest threatening to break free. He moved toward me, concern etched on his face as he studied me closely. "You look different," he remarked slowly. "Different how?" My voice wavered slightly as I tried to maintain composure. "Like you're carrying something," he said softly, stepping closer. "Is everything okay?" The question hung between us like a fragile thread ready to snap at any moment. My heart raced as I considered how much he truly understood, and how much he didn't know. "I'm fine," I managed to say, but felt the lie linger in the air. His gaze bore into mine with an intensity that made me feel exposed and vulnerable. "You know you can talk to me about anything." A part of me wanted to confess everything, the truth about our son and how tangled our emotions had become, but fear held me back like an anchor dragging me deeper into murky waters. "I appreciate that," I said finally, forcing myself to break eye contact and focus on anything but him, anything but this moment where reality threatened to unravel completely. He seemed satisfied for now, but continued observing me with an intensity that made every nerve in my body tingle uncomfortably. Just then, my phone buzzed from across the room, a sound so ordinary yet jarring in this charged atmosphere. It was a text from our son. "Can we talk?" My stomach dropped as dread washed over me like cold rain. There was no way this conversation could remain hidden much longer. "I need to check something," I murmured hastily before retreating into another room where I could read his message without being seen. "Please don't let him find out," it read simply but carried weight beyond its words. The walls felt like they were closing in around me as I considered how precarious everything had become, how easily everything could collapse if one wrong word slipped out or if someone overheard something they shouldn't have. I typed back quickly, "I'll be there soon." Returning to face my husband felt like stepping onto a battlefield where each word could be a weapon capable of inflicting wounds too deep to heal. "Everything okay?" he asked again when I re-entered the living room. "Yes," I replied too quickly, it sounded hollow even to my own ears. He nodded slowly but remained unconvinced. Suspicion flickered behind his eyes like flames ready to engulf everything in their path if given fuel enough. As we settled into an uneasy silence punctuated only by distant sounds outside, the rustling leaves outside mingling with laughter from neighbors enjoying their evening, I couldn't shake off this gnawing feeling that change was imminent, that whatever fragile balance we maintained would soon shatter irreparably under pressure neither of us fully understood yet faced together nonetheless. A sudden crash echoed from outside, a neighbor's fence collapsing under strain from wind or age, and both of us jumped at its abruptness, reality intruding upon our fragile bubble once more reminding us how easily things could fall apart without warning or reason. "What was that?" he asked sharply, moving toward the window instinctively as if seeking answers among shadows cast by streetlights illuminating twilight's descent upon suburbia surrounding us both now feeling more foreign than ever before. "I don't know," I replied breathlessly while panic surged anew within, my mind racing ahead imagining all possibilities leading back toward our son standing alone somewhere waiting for clarification amidst chaos unfolding around him. And then came another text. This time not from him but instead one bearing unexpected weight. "I know." My heart dropped. Dread coiled tightly around every thought spiraling down dark corridors leading nowhere good. "What is it?" He turned back toward me suddenly, eyes narrowing suspiciously while wearing concern mixed with something darker lurking just beneath surface tension threatening rupture at any moment. Nothing important. My voice faltered under scrutiny while knowing full well truth lay just beyond reach, taunting me relentlessly, now demanding acknowledgement long overdue. But before further words could escape either lips, before any chance remained for explanations or excuses, the doorbell rang sharply, cutting through thick atmosphere, suffocating us both, leaving only uncertainty lingering heavily behind.